For those of you that don't know me, my name is Vincent. I'm Executive Director at Kansas Housing Resources Corporation, or KHRC. I actually had the pleasure of being in Salina just about, I guess, 10 hours ago. I spent the night there last night. We had the statewide housing needs assessment meeting with your community. Had a wonderful discussion. You've got so much going on in Salina and in the region. I was on a call with your Chamber of Commerce and the Lieutenant Governor maybe a month or so ago, and just heard about the amount of employees that are getting hired without housing for the employees. And it's a wonderful problem to have, that you're growing and that you have so many good things happening. But at the same time, it is a challenge. We have a housing problem in our state. You've got a housing problem in your region. And that's a little bit what I'm going to talk about today, with more the crisis of COVID. But at the same time, it's something to celebrate the good work that you're all doing in your community. I walked along the downtown, and just to see the life that is happening there, there's a lot of good things happening. So congratulations on that. A special shout out to Julia Ramos, to Yvonne, who I got to meet yesterday. You've got a wonderful and involved community relations division. It speaks highly for you all that you're willing to spend a Friday afternoon to talk about fair housing, to talk about tenant landlord issues, to talk about the pandemic. There's just so much need out there, and so many important issues that we as a state and you as a community need to talk about. So it's wonderful that you recognize the importance of fair housing. It's a rights issue, it's an equity issue, and it's integral to serving those that we serve in our state. Trying to think of any just introductory comments I wanted to make before we kind of jump into the actual presentation. Just kind of an overview of what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to take a couple minutes and I'm going to talk about home, because I think it's important that while we administer programs at KHRC, while we build housing, that what we're really doing is we're unlocking home. Home has never been more important than it is right now, so we're going to talk about that. I'm also going to give you a very high 30,000 foot overview of KHRC, recognizing that there may be some of you that aren't very familiar with the work that we do, the people that we serve, who we are as an organization. Then we're going to talk very generally about the housing problem our state has, and then more importantly, the crisis that our state faces with evictions, with COVID, with the pandemic. We're going to talk about the success of our relatively small Kansas Eviction Prevention Program, or KEPP. And then I'm going to spend most of the time talking about our new Kansas Emergency Rental Assistance, or KERA program. I'm going to talk about eligibility. I'm going to talk about how you apply. I'm going to talk about community partners that we work with. And then we're going to actually take a couple minutes and just walk you through the website so you get familiar with that. And then I'm going to turn it over to you, because I want to hear about your questions. Hopefully I've got some good answers, and if not, hopefully I can get you in contact with the people that would have those answers. I've got my executive assistant, Abby Phillips, on the program. A special shout out to her, and thanks for helping run the presentation. And we'll just go ahead and dive in, but please feel free to, I guess, kind of capture your questions in the chat. Abby's going to help me watch for those, and then we'll have some time at the end. But let's go ahead and go into the presentation. All right, as we get it pulled up here, let's take just a second and talk about why home matters. I like to give the example of my kitchen table. That I think of all the life that happens around my kitchen table at the Vincent household. We've had some of our biggest arguments. We've had some of our biggest laughter. We've had holiday celebrations. We say our prayers. We enjoy fine food, and we enjoy some not so fine food. And depending on if I'm cooking, it's usually not so fine food. But the memories that happen around my kitchen table, just like your kitchen table, and just like how at KHRC we unlock homes and we don't just build housing. I think of how the kitchen table isn't about the walls that are around it and the roof that's over it. It's about the memories that are created at our kitchen tables. We created a little short clip that we're going to play for you now that just kind of talks about using the table as the imagery, why home matters.
Dear house, through your doors is everything I love. Below your roof is everything I am. Your walls frame my life. Your table is the canvas for my autobiography. Every scratch shares a story. Every meal is a memory. You weren't built brick by brick. You were built moment by moment. In you, we can disagree, but not divide. You give us room for science and silence. Even during the worst, you bring out the best in me. Your purpose is shelter, but you provide me with so much more. Dear home, thank you for the celebrations, for the peace of mind, for the lessons. In you, I have learned, I have loved, I have lived. Kansas Housing Resources Corporation helps Kansans access the safe, affordable housing they need and the dignity they deserve.
So I love that clip, mostly just because it's a reminder for us that we're talking about homes, we're talking about people, we're talking about families, all that deserve dignity. And we remember that in the work that we do at Kansas Housing, and I know the work that you all do in your organizations. So we'll go to the next slide now and just give a little high-level overview about Kansas Housing, our organization. Years ago, we were part of the state of Kansas Department of Commerce, and then we split off and became a nonprofit public corporation. We administer housing and community programs across the state and in your region. KHRC serves everyone from providing literally a shelter or roof over a person's head through our emergency solutions grant, our tenant-based rental assistance programs, and then on up through the continuum of care. We actually fund and finance the development of affordable housing, both low income and moderate income in our state and in your region. A recent development that we actually did that I've shared as a highlight for our other presentations is the Lee Lofts building in downtown Salina. It's a beautiful property. It's a nice example of how we can finance needed housing units that's safe, quality, affordable housing, but also be a catalyst for change in communities. The Lee building saved a historic structure where Lee Jeans, of course, was built or was operated. We were a part of the downtown Salina ongoing redevelopment. You've got great achievements in that area, and we are just thrilled to be a part of that. We've helped with the economy in Salina as we were able to finance that housing. So that model, that success is happening throughout the state through our different housing development programs. We have a weatherization program. We're able to provide first-time homebuyer down payment assistance for individuals who are wanting to achieve the American dream of homeownership. We know the homeownership isn't right for everyone, but it is right for a big chunk of our populace. I'm proud to say Salina is actually out of the entire state has the best usage of our first-time homebuyer program. So a shout out to your lenders and to your community leaders in Salina. I think that's something to celebrate. We have a very healthy compliance division at Kansas Housing. Compliance is never fun to talk about, but it's so important, not just to establish kind of the fair housing component that you just heard about, but also reflecting that we want to be a good long-term investment in your community. We want to be a good long-term neighbor. So when we build housing, we want to make sure that it's constructed well. We want to make sure that it's serving those that it's intended to serve. And we want to make sure that it's a good long-term asset for your community, because we want the image of affordable housing to be a good one for everyone involved. Our mission is simple at Kansas Housing. We help Kansans access the safe, affordable housing they need and the dignity they deserve. I like to talk about dignity. I think it's important, especially when we're serving people that are at risk of losing their homes, something that's integral and so important to their self, that we talk about dignity. It's important to remember that no matter who we're serving, we at Kansas Housing are going to be serving people with dignity, with the rights that they deserve, because it's so important to keep them in their homes for stability and for all of the things that home brings us. As far as who we work with at Kansas Housing, we work with everyone from government officials to bankers, from developers to property managers, from homeless advocates to nonprofits. If you live in, if you work in, if you breathe in the state of Kansas, you're a stakeholder of Kansas Housing. So we'll go ahead and go to the next slide and kind of talk about how our housing problem in the state has become a housing crisis. Let's first talk about the housing problem in our state. I think you're very aware, and I certainly heard in the community meeting in Salina last night, have a problem in our state with housing. We've got an aging housing stock that's getting older. It's difficult to bring contractors in. We have a lack of quality, competent, available contractors, which adds to the challenges. I like to talk about the 5 L's of the housing crisis in our state, or problem in our state and in our nation. This comes from the National Home Builders Association, their chief economist, who talks about how there's a shortage of labor, there's a shortage of lumber, there's a shortage of lots, there's never enough loans, lending, and there's a 5th L that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head right now, which will come to me. But I think it's a nice way of kind of capturing how the market does not serve our state or the country to adequately address our housing needs. Unfortunately, it costs up here to build the housing, and it only can be financed down here, so there's a gap. And that's where programs like KHRC'S come into play. And that's during normal times when we have a housing problem in our state. But and I'm reminded by Abby, luckily, I just got a note from her that the 5th is laws. Thank you, Abby, for that good reminder. And that's just that recognizing that some of our laws can be a constraint on our housing market. But again, this is during a normal time. We have a shortage of safe, quality, accessible housing in our state. What COVID has made a problem is now a crisis. And I talk about how home has never been more important. Home has always been a place where we've had our shelter. It's always been a place where we've had healthy families, healthy neighborhoods, healthy communities. But during COVID, when we've all sheltered at a place, it's been so much more than that. Home has been where we've worked. Home has been where we've had our schoolhouse. Home has been where we've bought things virtual or online. I've participated in doctor's appointments from the safety of my home. The Vincent family has had worship services in our home through virtual worship services. We've been in PTO meetings, Cub Scouts, 4-H. You think of all this life that is happening from the comfort and safety of our homes right now, which is wonderful as long as you've got a home. But unfortunately, we have a big chunk of our population that is at risk of losing their homes, which becomes an immediate crisis, not only for the tenants, but also for those who are landlords in our state. So I'm going to go into that a bit more here on these next couple slides. So if we could go ahead and go to the next slide, let's talk about the CDC moratorium a little bit and the state eviction moratorium. These are integral, important protections that keep people in the safety of their home when home has never been more important. So we're absolutely in favor of these protections, but we also recognize at KHRC the challenges it's put both on our tenants and on our landlords. For the tenants, even though they can't be evicted if they have a COVID nexus or hardship, the reality is that the rent continues to accrue month after month after month, leaving a big check to pay when they can eventually have to pay it. On the landlord side, we've got a big chunk of our state landlords who are small businesses that are left without monthly income to pay their bills. Our landlords have mortgages to pay. They've got taxes and maintenance and upkeep, just like we all do as homeowners. This is a big cost and a big burden on our landlords that multiplies throughout our economy in Salina and across our state. We are on a collision course between tenants who can't pay their rent and landlords who can't pay their bills. That's unsustainable without some kind of government involvement. Fortunately, we do have funds now to address some of these issues that we're going to be talking about in the next couple slides. But let's talk a little bit about just some numbers that we've seen in our office, and you may have already talked about a little bit with HCCI. So about a third of our state rent their homes. The numbers are staggering. In September alone, about 12% of our renters were behind before we were able to start getting some of this rental assistance out. In January, the rental shortfall was between $130 and $180 million. The anticipated eviction filings in January were about 50,000. So we're seeing kind of some different numbers, but all of them are huge for our state. One of the things I like pointing out is this last statistic, how we've seen a 12% decline in revenue for our landlords during COVID, at the same time that we've seen about a 15% increase in costs. Again, an insurmountable collision course that our landlords are faced with that has economic repercussions for your community and for our state. So that's the numbers, but let's talk about what we've seen at our office. During normal presentation on just all of our programs, I would have talked about our emergency solutions program and our community services block grant program. I'll briefly talk about them now. So we fund service providers around the state, including in your area, who do wonderful work, who are able to provide rental assistance and utility deposits, assistance to get people stably housed. And fortunately, we received about 15 million in additional funding during the pandemic for those programs. We also fund community action agencies around the state. A lot of you are probably familiar with them as administrators of the Head Start programs, but they do so much more than that. We're able to provide food services, we're able to provide transportation, and we're able to provide housing. Luckily, in addition to the traditional money, we got about $8 million more for our community action programs across the state. I want to say the Salina providers, NCRPC, but great providers around the state of important services. That's some funds that we received before all of these most recent relief bills that just were passed. But I want to take a couple minutes and I want to talk about our Kansas Eviction Prevention Program. We were given about $20 million by the state of Kansas Recovery Office. It was a very quick timeline that we had to spend the funds, but we did successfully launch that program and run it last fall. But it's a nice snapshot of what we saw as the need before we get into our new KERA program. So we'll go to the next slide and talk about that a bit. If we could go back though just a bit, Abby, yeah, perfect. So this is our Kansas Eviction Prevention Program. This was a program that we launched in October of last year. We had about 2 weeks to design the program, literally. So it was a massive undertaking for a very small office, yet an amazing success. We did a little analysis I wanted to just share with you, which kind of gives a little bit of the scale of what we saw with that program. First of all, we had about $20 to $25 million to award. When we launched the program, we ended up seeing, I want to say it was almost something like 12,000 applications from tenant households, representing almost 30,000 tenants, people in our state that were at risk of being evicted from October to December. You think about 30,000 people and how many people that is. I mean, that's the population of Emporia or of Pittsburgh, Kansas. In that window of time, we're facing eviction, losing their homes during the holidays. We did a little breakdown. You can see there's about half of those tenants were in single family homes and half were in apartments. which I think was kind of an interesting breakdown. It'll be fascinating to see if that's what we see with our new KERA program more long-term. But we were thrilled to have this program. This used CRF dollars from the Federal CARES Act, the first relief bill that was passed. But let's go to the next slide here, and we'll kind of just show you a couple of the, I guess, success stories that we heard from that. Here's a nice breakdown that just talked about, and I'm sorry, Abby, if we could go back one slide. I'm kind of jumping around here, but this, I'd forgotten that we had a slide just about the composition of our household size. You could see it was kind of naturally kind of declining, but it was really across the gamut, everything from a household of one that was assisted to people that had 4 or 5 in their household. So I think that's kind of an interesting breakdown to see. And again, it'll be interesting to see whether that kind of continues as this pandemic goes on. But now we'll go to the next slide, which kind of talks about the human element of it. We have seen so many grateful people, both tenants and landlords alike, excuse me, choking here, that just reflects both the economics of how the dollars kept people in their homes and were vital for the landlords, and also just the human element of how grateful our tenants were to be able to be in their homes during the holidays. We'll go to the next slide as well. I always like pointing out this last one. I think it really captures this particular household was dealing with, they weren't able to tell their children just how bad it was as they were at risk of losing their home. The person says that her daughter, it was their senior year, and they were trying to apply for college and scholarships, and that they were so grateful to get the KEPP assistance because it kept them in their home so that the kid could concentrate on what she should be concentrating on as a senior in that school. And you think about that. You think about how a little bit of investment in one household provided more than just rent. It provided stability. It kept one household in their home so that their daughter could go to school, get an education, hopefully stick around in Salina or in Kansas, wherever this individual lived. And that's important. And that's something that we keep in the back of our minds as we're administering these government funds for your community. So we'll go to the next slide, but I think it's just worth pointing out. This is a little clip that we put together, which talks a little bit about how housing and home has never been more important during COVID. So sit back and just check out this clip, please.
Dear home, thank you for everything you have given us. For the shelter that you provided, which gave space for life lessons. Now, life lessons are coupled with school lessons as bedrooms become classrooms. Housework happens alongside office work because kitchen counters are also desks. And now, community looks a little different. Worship looks a little different. Healthcare looks a little different. But in all, you remain constant. Oh, home, you have provided us shelter.
Hey guys, breakfast.
But more importantly, you have provided us space for love and for life. Your door opens to introduce us to the adventure that awaits in the evening, and it secures the things that mean everything to us. Each turn of the doorknob is a handshake that reaffirms our commitment to each other. Because right now, home means more. And when we return, we enter your familiar embrace to a feeling that is as incredible as it is indescribable. Every Kansan deserves safe, affordable housing. Kansas Housing Resources Corporation is unlocking home.
So I like that video. It actually features a Habitat family that I've gotten to know personally through the last couple of years. And I remember going to the groundbreaking, or the, I guess, ribbon cutting when they got to move into their new home. I still remember the little girl took me in and showed me her bedroom that had been painted with a vivid purple that was just a searing purple color. And she was so proud to show me the paint on her own bedroom. And that's those type of moments that you can't put into numbers. The homes that we're unlocking, the memories that we're creating for the families that we're serving, is always in our mind at Kansas Housing, and I know in the work that you do, but it's something to remember. And this is also a nice segue into how we need to work ongoing to keep people in their homes. So I'm going to take a couple minutes now and go ahead and jump into our newest program, the Kansas Emergency Rental Assistance, or KERA program. I'm excited and yet a little overwhelmed, just like our entire team at KHRC, as we dig into this massive amount of resources to address a massive amount of need in our state. As we demonstrated through KEPP, the need is huge, and we've seen that and continue to. Last December, we received, Congress passed a $25 billion program of emergency rental assistance that our state received $200 million of. It was called the ERA program. Wichita got $20 million for their particular city, and KHRC received the rest of it to administer on behalf of the rest of the state. It's very similar to our KEPP program, and yet because it's a different federal program, there are more stringent rules, which have led to some complications that we can talk about. We launched the program March 15th, so we're going on about 6 weeks. I'll tell you, it hasn't been a seamless launch. In the sake of transparency, it's been a bit of a challenge. We're literally building the airplane as we're flying it, and that's because it's an emergency program. We got the rules, I want to say 16 days before the program launched. So you can imagine just the technical challenges of trying to get rules, get them into a software system that meets the needs of tenants and landlords during an emergency situation. So it hasn't gone without complications, but at the same time, we're getting there, and I'm really pleased that we've got this long-term program and resource available for your community and for our state. I'm going to take a few minutes and just kind of talk about the program, and then we're going to actually pull up the website and show you how it works. So as far as an overview of the program itself, one key difference with KERA over KEPP is that we're able to provide utility and internet assistance to households in addition to rental assistance, which is pretty cool. We know, especially as I talked about, how so much is being done from our homes, that internet is an essential utility, just like everything else is. But at the same time, utilities are vital. We just went through a vicious cold cycle in our state and are paying the utility bills because of it, as you all know, this last month or two. And we're grateful to have that utility assistance piece as well. There is a requirement under the program that, and this is the federal rules, that folks have to show a COVID nexus that were a hardship that's due to the pandemic. But the way the program works is very similar to KEPP. Tenants and landlords have to jointly apply for the assistance. We have an online application system we're going to kind of show you. If the application is approved, the landlord or service provider then receives the funds directly from KERA, and it credits the tenant's account. The approved tenants are eligible for a maximum of 12 months of assistance, which is a much longer window and higher benefit amount than we were able to provide under KEPP. But we'll go ahead and go to the next slide and go into a little bit more detail here. So first, let's talk about what the assistance itself covers. As I mentioned, we were able to provide 12 months of past due or current rent. So it's a significant length of time period. We're also able to provide up to 3 months of prospective rent at a time, which is different than KEPP. And we recognize that that's a real valuable benefit. We're able to provide past due utility, home energy, and that includes gas, water, electric, sewer, trash, as well as internet expenses. We have a note here that all expenses must have been billed or charged April 1st or later, so that's something to keep in mind. But I will be showing you on our website, there's a lot of specific information that I think is going to be helpful to just your community. We try to answer as many questions as possible in our FAQs that might be helpful, and I'll make sure I show you where that is. We'll go to the next slide here. Let's talk about eligibility. So this is all based on the federal rules, which is more stringent than our previous KEPP eligibility requirements. The first is that tenants have to rent their home. That's an important distinction because this program doesn't serve homeowners. We are going to be launching a homeowner foreclosure assistance program in the coming months. That was paid for under a separate federal relief bill. The state of Kansas is going to be receiving, I want to say it's like $56 million for foreclosure prevention, which I'm excited about because that's a resource that we haven't had in the past to address an important need. But KERA is specifically for people renting their homes. So in addition to renting their homes, their 2020 household income cannot exceed 80% of the area's median income. And I'm going to show you our income chart shortly on our website where you can find that information. Third piece is at least one member of the household has to be experiencing some kind of a COVID-related hardship, which we'll talk about on our website. Fourth is at least one member of the tenant household is uncertain where they're going to be staying or whether they would become homeless without the housing assistance. And then the fifth piece is the tenant can provide valid proof of identification. All elements that are talked about in the FAQs if you need some additional information, but that's the general eligibility requirements. As far as how to apply, the landlord separately can complete an online certification that once they enter the information for the tenant, that the tenant is notified, and then the tenant can submit an online application. It does require the cooperation of both the landlord and the tenant for this program. That reflects kind of the more stringent federal rules for the program, but it also provides kind of a level of documentation so that we can ensure that there's not any kind of fraud potential going on with the application. If approved, the landlord and or utility provider will directly receive the funds through an ACH from KHRC. It's a efficient program once it's all running smoothly, given those administrative challenges we kind of talked about at the beginning. So let's go to the next slide here. This is a slide to actually talk about the website, but if you're all okay with it, let's go ahead, and I think Abby's got the website page pulled up here. We're going to share it on the screen and just kind of high level walk you through how the website looks and what it's involved with. You can access it through kshousingcorp.org. That's our main homepage, and there's a KERA link at the very top here, so she's pulled it up. You'll notice that there's a banner. There's Apply Now for KERA program, which is KHRC's program. And then there's also a Wichita residents only page for people that live within the city itself. But let's go ahead and click on the link for the KERA program so you can see what our website looks like. So if we could just kind of scroll down slowly, this kind of talks, of course, about the need, why the program exists. It talks about the audience that's served, how if, of course, people in Wichita need to click on their program link. Talks about the funding source. But we'll go down a little bit and kind of talk about, it gives an overview of the program itself, the eligibility criteria that I talked about, and then some of the same information I talked about with the assistance that we provide. But the first thing I want to point out to you all is this partner search tool that is on our website. This recognizes that there's some people across our state and likely in your community that for whatever reason may not be comfortable or able or willing to maneuver an online application system. So we have partner agencies across the state that are working with us to assist with that application process. Actually, if you don't mind clicking on Search Now, Abby, we'll show you how to work the tool here. And we're slowly adding to the list of providers. But by the design of the program, we're starting out with our community action partners around the state. I believe I had shared NCRPC in your area, but I'm not seeing them on the list. I'm looking here at our other list. they may not be a community partner yet for KERA, but any of these organizations do have the ability to assist providers, and keep watching this search tool, because we'll be putting more organizations that have been trained to do KERA processing to kind of assist people with that online application tool. But if we could go back then to the previous slide, that's the partner search tool that's available out there. But now I wanted to kind of show you under resources, just some information for the community of Salina, so that you can be aware of what's out there if you've got questions. Could we just click on the tenant flyer? There is an English and a Spanish version of this for anybody that's interested, but it is a nice 2-page document that just gives an overview of the assistance that we're able to provide. If you could scroll down to the next slide or next page of that too, Abby, thanks. As well as just, how to actually apply for the program. We do have this in hard form, and we're trying to get it out to service providers, unemployment claims offices, different field offices around the state. If you're interested in having some of these to hand out to people, please let me know. But just wanted you to know that this tool is out there to be able to access, and this is specifically for tenants. If we could go back now, Abby, I think we also have a landlord one I want to show. It's actually just, you'll have to scroll up a little bit, Abby. It's under, yep, there we are. And again, there's a Spanish version of this one as well, but we've got a nice one for landlords available too, to kind of walk landlords through the process. So I wanted to make sure you're aware of that. And then we can go back to the KERA page now. And I know I'm kind of going through these quickly, but I wanted to touch on the FAQs there, which you don't need to click on that link, Abby, but there, if you go back under the forms there, yeah, where the cursor is, there's an FAQ page that actually gives, it's probably 10 pages of questions and answers. That would be a good place to kind of look if you have a question about what our program will or won't be able to cover, how the program works, just questions that we see come up regularly. But I do want to click on KERA income limits right below that. It's always a question that comes up, and I think it's important. Let's go down to Salina County, Abby, just to kind of show you the income limits on who we're able to serve. And this is a federal income requirement, so we don't have much flexibility here. But if you could scroll up just a little bit, Abby, to show that this is based on household size. So if you can see for a 4-person household in Salina County, the income limit is at or below 56,000 household income. And if there's questions about how to calculate income, that's actually under the FAQs page, but it is based on household size, and just wanted to make sure I kind of pointed that out, where you can locate that on our website. So we'll go back now to the KERA page. Appreciate you kind of walking us through all this. There's information for landlords to get set up for payments. And then let's just scroll down a little bit more, Abby, to just let you know that there's obviously a section about just KERA in the news. We're getting more and more publications out there of interest on KERA. But then most important thing probably is just if you could scroll down slightly more, there's the questions. We've found that the most efficient and effective way to contact us with questions is to contact this KERA@kshousingcorp.org. We are getting an influx of applications, as you can imagine, from tenants and landlords alike. I want to say that there's probably, I think last week we've received over 10,000 applications already. I'm requesting upwards of $30–35 million in assistance, which demonstrates the need, the volume of need that's out there. But because of that, we've had to structure a system that is mostly online based. So we've got this hopefully user-friendly website. But the easiest way to contact us with specific questions is this KERA@kshousingcorp.org page, email address. We do have a phone number. It's just our main contact number. We've got bilingual staff that can assist through the phone, and that is certainly an option. That number, I believe, is 785-217-2001. You can just see it on our KHRC website. But highly encourage you to contact us through that KERA@kshousingcorp email address. So just wanted to kind of give you that visual of the website itself. We'll go back to the PowerPoint here just for a couple more minutes, and then we will give her a second to stop sharing and pull up the PowerPoint. And then we'll kind of turn it over to Q&A here in just a second. But got a couple more slides here to show you. So that's the overview of our website itself. We'll go to the next slide here. A couple benchmarks. I guess here's better numbers than what I gave you. This was as of about a week ago. We'd received 9,200 applications, so I know it's higher than that now. $30 million. It's a lot of money, and it just demonstrates the need that's out there for not only the rental assistance, but the utility piece. You'll see that the number of applications that we've actually are ready to pay is not very high yet, and I look forward to the day that I can show you a much higher volume of processing. It's happening. We've made some amazing progress with our software this last week, which I am really excited about because it will really pick up the pace of processing. But to be honest, we have a backlog of applications that we want to get through. So we're actually contracting with a contractor to help us get through that backlog so that we can be moving forward more seamlessly here in the next month or so. So if you're hearing some concerns just about the pace of processing, we do have a firm plan to address that backlog that I'm confident will be meeting my expectations as well as yours in the coming months. So that's the benchmarks that we're at right now. Let's go to the next slide. I've talked about the community partners. As I mentioned, we're going to be adding to this list in the near future, but we are starting out with our community action partners around the state. So that does give you some assistance. I should mention that these parties have multiple offices around the state, and they also can assist over the phone or virtually with folks. So even though you may not see a Salina partner out there yet, these entities will be able to assist anybody in the Salina region as well. Let's go to the next slide though, Abby. Okay, how you can help. That's important because a big piece of this is getting the word out to communities around the state. One of the things that we're doing is we're putting together a kind of a marketing packet that is going to have everything from emails you can send out to information you can put in newsletters on your website, community bulletin boards. We'd appreciate any assistance that you can have getting the word out there for KERA in your community. I know you've got a great community city housing department, and we've got a great Chodo community housing development organization in your area. So we already have good partners that are out there that are going to help us get the word out there. I've already shown you the KERA page, so make sure you're getting that link out to your partners. I want to make sure I share that we have a mailing list that is an important way to get in the know on not only KERA, but on our new housing assistance, the homeowner prevention fund we're going to be launching soon. I'm going to be sending this PowerPoint to Julia to get shared with everybody after this presentation. The links will be embedded in this document, so you'll be able to click on that and actually find our mailing list. Abby may be able to actually put it in the chat function as well. But I'd encourage you to sign up. You can pick what level of notifications you receive from our office, but there is so much need out there and so much federal resource that things are changing on a weekly or monthly basis. So I'd encourage you to get signed up just to stay apprised of all the different happenings at KHRC. Just our small office of 50 is growing. We've got almost 150 employees with all this growth. New resources for not only emergency rental assistance, but housing development that's going to be coming online in the coming months and in the next year. A lot of good stuff happening, a lot of growth, but it's just the challenge of getting through the logistics of it all as we grow sustainably here at KHRC to address your housing needs, our housing needs. Let's go to the next slide, please, Abby. I mentioned kind of the digital toolkit that we're going to be having. That resource will be available on our website here in the coming weeks. So I encourage you to kind of check back and utilize that resource as well. We'll go to the next slide. And last video clip I'm going to show you is specific to our KERA program. It's nice, still kind of captures a few of the staff that we have at KHRC that are doing wonderful work, a couple of the tenants and landlords that we serve. But sit back and watch this little clip, and gives a nice visual of the program too. Thanks.
Nothing can be more frightening than to be unsure of where you're going to lay your head at night. KERA stands for Kansas Emergency Rental Assistance. A eligible household can receive up to 12 months of rental assistance and home energy costs.
It was a big burden lifted, like, okay, I can do this.
This is a COVID-related hardship, so if you find yourself in that position, I would encourage you to apply. For more information, go to khshousingcorp.org. Every Kansan deserves to have a stable home.
All right, so that was kind of just a little visual again about our program itself. But at this point, I think there may still be one more slide just with my contact information. So we'll specifically, this is, I'd already shared kind of that key email address, but we'll reiterate it again, KERA@khshousingcorp.org. We'd also encourage you to follow us on Facebook and Twitter and all the social media pages. We're trying to get our word out there as much as possible. Quick little announcement about the housing needs assessment. I shared that I was in Salina last night for the meeting that's going on, but KHRC, in addition to everything else that we've talked about today, we recognize that we need real data. We need real information to know what the needs are across the state and in your region. We recognize that the state hasn't done a housing study in 30 years since the Finney administration. So it's time. We're proud to be a sponsor of that venture. I have been personally involved in probably upwards of a dozen different meetings around the state on the front end, as we've hired RDG, which is a regional housing organization that does these needs assessments. But the goal is to have a thorough public process to get as much information from our communities across the state, quantitative and qualitative, on what our states and regions' housing needs are. We want to know what works in your communities, what doesn't work. We want to know how we at the state level can help, how your local government can assist, what employers can do, what supportive housing services are needed. It is a true comprehensive look at our urban and rural areas alike, from single family to multifamily housing, rehab, and everything in between. It's a year-long process. The first couple months, the stage we're in now is kind of the fact-finding stage. We have upwards of 100 different meetings going on across the state, most of those virtual, but a number of those are in-person and regional meetings. We're meeting with different stakeholders, from developers to housing advocates, and just truly getting a good comprehensive understanding of our state and regional housing needs. We'll have a draft report of this done in the early summer. We're going to do another tour in the fall to kind of present this report, to get your input as a community on the results of the report. The goal is to have a final product by the legislative session that will have not only statewide data, but regional data and even some local data. It's going to help my office so that we can better equitably meet and distribute funds that we have. It's also going to help us recognize where we have holes and where we're not serving communities well, so that I can go to the legislature and the congressional delegation. I can go to foundations and employers and talk about how we need all of these different stakeholders to assist us to identify resources that can help address all of our housing needs, so that we as a state can grow. So that venture is going on right now. I don't know if Abby's got the link to that site, but we'll try to follow up after this meeting to get you the link to that specific statewide housing needs assessment website as well, so that you're kind of apprised on that important effort going on right now. But let's go to the next slide here, Abby, and I think, is that it? All right, I think that's the end of the slide, so we can go ahead and stop presenting the presentation. And at this point, I don't have any more prepared remarks. I would be happy to field your questions. It looks like we may have some in the chat already that we can go through, and then I'm happy to answer them whatever format you'd like, Julia or Yvonne.
Hi, thank you very much, Ryan, for that information. I also wanted to talk to you about the City of Salina Community Relations Division in partnership with Catholic Charities of Northern Kansas. Has been awarded a total of nearly $3.1 million in assistance from Kansas Housing Corporation to assist eligible Salinans who are at imminent risk of eviction and individuals who have lost housing to quickly regain housing stability. Salinans struggling to cover rent and utility payments due to the COVID-19 pandemic could qualify for emergency assistance. To apply, Salina tenants should complete the online inquiry form. They can go to Catholic Charities of Northern Kansas website to inquire about the program or to complete an online application. So we hope that you will take advantage of this program if you are experiencing situations related to COVID pandemic. There is assistance out there, or you can call the Catholic Charities of Northern Kansas, or you can call the Community Relations Division of the City of Salina. I want to thank, and now I want to take this time to thank our speakers, Teresa Baker of Housing and Credit Counseling, Michelle Ewert, Associate Professor of Law at Washburn University, Ryan Vincent of Kansas Housing Resource Corporation. You all have been a tremendous asset in helping our community and those who were present on the webinar to learn more about fair housing, about VAWA, and about the rental assistance programs out there. So, and thank you all for attending this webinar, this Fair Housing Webinar 2021. And hopefully next year we'll all be able to see you in person and do this. So I thank you very much. And the presenters will be sending us material to send out to you. And we will also be sending you evaluation forms that we hope that you will all fill out and give us your feedback. And we'd love to hear what you learned and what you thought about the program, and give your shout outs to the presenters as well. Do any of the presenters have any questions, or does anybody have any questions from the chat?
Yvonne, it does look like I've got a couple of questions, specifically just kind of about the eligibility criteria a little bit. If we've got a minute, I may go ahead and.
Oh, absolutely. Go ahead.
And I should have gone into a little bit more detail, but the question was just whether we could expand on the eligibility criteria a little bit. And I know there's several pieces of that. The first is that I talked about a kind of a COVID hardship that tenants have to be experiencing in order to be eligible. Specifically, it's defined as one or more household members can demonstrate how COVID has directly or indirectly impacted their ability to pay rent or utilities. And our FAQs go into more detail on what we consider to be a COVID hardship. But we try to have a pretty liberal interpretation of that, recognizing that there are a lot of different reasons for people experiencing some of the struggles that they are. That can be everything from somebody losing their job, obviously, to somebody having a loss of job hours, work hours, due to COVID itself. It can be, I'm just looking here at the definition that we have in our FAQs, but it says this may include qualifying for unemployment. So obviously unemployment benefits would be something that they could demonstrate, experiencing a reduction of household income, incurring significant costs or financial hardship due to the pandemic. And that could be medical expenses. It could be childcare expenses that have come because of COVID. We do, because of the federal rules, have to actually get documentation of whatever the financial hardship is. So that's something that we are able to have people upload through the system that's in our KERA website. But I do appreciate kind of that question. And again, we just kind of steer people towards that FAQ document that we pointed out because it goes into more detail. If people still have questions though on that particular element, they could email the KERA email address that I've given. There was also some questions just about income. I'm kind of looking through the notes here to make sure I'm understanding if I'm missing anything. Well, maybe it was just about COVID hardship. Again, happy to field any other questions though, if you've got them. It was a great question though, thank you.